is day 1318 of Arukh HaShulchan. Since we are still at war, we should be as close to our learning for the Yeshua of Klal Yisrael. Today we are doing Yerodeh Siman Reish Aleph Sif Chav Zayin to Lamed Aleph. Chav Zayin. Kam Lashon Perek Test in Yugimel Yesh Dikduk Zeh. There's this question is a question of how much water can be zochlin, how much water has to be notfin. Let's see how the Rambam is to say. If the water which is flowing from the spring can mix up with the water which is dripping from it, because in the Rambam there's a difference between flowing and dripping. If the flowing water is more than the dripping water, it's a spring for all intents and purposes. If it's the dripping water is more than the flowing water, and so too if rainwater is more than river water, and they're not matar when they flow, only if they're stationary. From the beginning of his word, it sounds like it's just like a mikveh. So it's hefech, and it seems like it's not that way. I'm not sure. I don't see exactly why that's the case. But Veneer Shen Ditu Klauze, Arukh HaShulchan says this inference is not correct. Who can, I guess the question is like this. Okay, I misunderstood. All right, if it's 50-50, can mikveh, Allah is like mikveh. In other words, it's precisely the same amount of zochlin and notfin. That if it's 50-50, that it is has a din of a maya. There's no inference at all. I'm saying, who can be precise? Exactly 50-50. 20 so of this, 20 so of that. And certainly, and the primary law is that if it's a 50-50 split, we have to be machmir. So the Mishnah and the Rambam don't care about any inferences because it's obvious. In the brackets, he says, "Yitmiyanak as a Mishnah Sham Sheik Sham Yirabbeinu Divra Mid Rabbi Tzadok Aloshan Shas Shem Yuba Notim Ayin Sham." I'm going to say Yisrael Aloshan Shas Mi Mishnah the So Perek Al Kmosh Kosavnu. In any event, that's not important for us. Vayin Sham Mashkos B'Shem Arrived. You see whether you invite the name Arrived. Mishum the E F Charlotte Tzamtzem. It can't be precise. Misfeko being Ruba, and as a result of that stuff, you need a rove. This, by the way, all this is in brackets. And it should be in Rashi script, as it normally is the case in this Arukh HaShulchan edition, but it's not. It's a mistake. But we're still in the brackets. Because you can't be precise, and on account of something you need a rove. Or else where it says not about stationary water, and he said the Medina mechza kosher. It seems that it's only issues here for something, but if it was otherwise, be a din mechza kosher. Lo yadati loma. Why? Possibly it's the difference what came first. If the flowing water came first, and the dripping water came on the zochlin, then you have to have from the notfim a majority in order to make it a mikveh. I'm not sure what I need for a notfim rov. Levatoim and a zochlim rov. I guess in other words, to overcome the status of the original half, you need to have more than half. I think that's what he means. The opposite you require from the zochlin rov in order to overcome the deficit of the first half being from the notfim. Because anything in its place is more significant, even though it's only half, but since it got there first, that's its place. This can mean for language Mishnah and language Rambam as well. Kav Ches. Kasav Ram Perek Tes Din Gimel. The Rambam writes, somebody who digs next to the sea, beside or next to the river, Makama beats him, and in places of marshes, swamps, Harek Meitam Tzio Shalo Pasku. They are like water which water which flowed off, which which never were separated. Now let's see what that means. And in brackets it says, "Yeshem b'hem arboim saw." They don't have, which don't have 40 saw. Shein tovlim b'hem, and then you can't use them to tovel. Rak l'truma l'tilas yadayim. She only cook kosher with truma l'tilas yadayim. Kamosh kosab mikon, like I said previously. K'nam pergav mikvos. Okay, so that he dug a hole there, and this isn't 40 saw. So, but it comes off the river, it comes off the marshes, comes off. You can use it not for toveling, but for truma l'tilas yadayim. Somebody who digs next to a spring, as long as the water comes from the spring, even if they stop and then they start flowing again, they are like a mayan despite the interruptions. If they stop flowing, I guess permanently, they are like water hole water. Okay, shut up. What is water hole water? So in brackets he says here, "Shogaria me tamtios." It's worse than me tamtios. Me tamtios. Some say it's also like me tamtios. K'mosh Arash, Peragav Mishlov Ayin Sham, end of the brackets. Is that Tosefta Peragav Mikvos? Is it Tosefta Vira Rabbeinu Shimshon Sham Ayin Sham? The Rashi brings down. Hisham Beis Yosef B'Siva Kesem Mishnah Sham Lama Lo Chilei Gam B'Tzad Nor. Why didn't the Rama differentiate when it's also case of what's next to the river? Beiboim Makmas Nor, where they come and account the river. Lobaim or don't come and account the river. Come over Maya, like you distinguish between by a spring. V'Gam B'Choper Tzariyam. Also somebody who digs next to the sea. Lama. Lo yadino kamai. Why should it be like a spring? Halo ma'eros v'naros v'yamim kulam din ma'in lehem. Springs and rivers and seas all have the halacha of the spring. V'tir answer came the aminos ein dinom shovel l'mayin lina mechatos. Since they're not the same for mechatos, we saw before the yamim are not can be turned recycling, but they're not. Can't be used for paradumah or they're not considered mayim chaim. L'chayich lukim b'tino gam b'zeh. Therefore, they're also differentiate here. It's strange what the comparison is. The brackets he says here, so very difficult explanation. It's safer. Tzemach tzedek ala mishnayos. It's safer gulos ilios. Perikav mishnah zayin. If you must have received lam gimel, yeshli ache. Basically, when he says lam gimel later on, you can resolve it. Okay, well, we're not there yet. Chavtes. And he was daiti hachi perusho. I think this is a pshat. In order to connect water to water, two pools of water to each other, you need to have the sheaf shaver sanod, which is the like literally the tube of the jug, which is two its bows turned. The diameter of the hole is two its bows. Okay, so Rashi's Bar of Simon says going to learn much later in the Simon. There's no connection at all. Even though they're standing next to each other. Since there's interruption between the two of them. And a klum. This is doch garnished. So wells which are made of warm water, that's rainwater, it's not a chiddush. The mamash state varmim. There are absolutely two different things. But if it's next to the river or next to the sea, there's a chiddush here. Somebody digs next to them. Even though there's interruption of dirt between the hole you dug and the river or the sea. Nevertheless, Yodua. It's known the sources underneath the ground are coming from the same place because they both come from the same water table. And the land is all porous, which allows the water to rise in both these areas. So eventually, when you dug that hole next to the river, you hit the water table, and it fills it from the water table. So therefore, we say that it's connected. So water which comes up in your hole is coming from the major river. But it doesn't matter. As long as the lesson's 40 so it doesn't do any good, the fact that they're connected. Ein Sham. Reish Eino Chibur Mitachas. So the connection from below doesn't work. Hatam, and the reason because you can't discern that connection on top. All this is by rivers and seas. Even though the rivers flowing from springs, the main fountain, the main spring, really, main springing is from the gushing, whatever the word could be, and the life force is in the spring themselves. But those which flow, which are drawn from them, to a distance, ain't like nimshachim. They only have a din of nimshachim, but dinim kamayan. Even though they're nimshach with mayan, they have a din of a mayan. Aval, and this is a major chiddush of Arukh HaShulchan, amazing chiddush. Aval ein len neviah v'chiyus. They have no. They're not gushing. Gushing sounds like it's a lot, so I don't know if that's the right term here. They're not emerging, I guess, let's say, and they don't have the life force of the Mayan. Because it's certainly by seawater. They don't have to be a cloud. They're not emerging at all. Because they're so far away and so distinct from the Mayan, which is their source, that they're tranquil and peaceful. That you can't use for paraduma water, because you need to have live water. But the place of the spring itself, its primary emergence and its life force. Hachover betzido, somebody who digs next to it. Karav low next to the Mayan. Abishai says to offer, even though there's a barrier of dirt. Koko nevertheless, gamba chafira yesh neviyah. Also in the whole Yudog there is emergence of chiyus and life force. The zel gets a mind, so it's like the Amayan itself. And but it was covered with dirt. But Takshin is gone. Now we come and reveal that everybody sees the same thing. They're both springing. They're both Mayan. So it's one thing with the spring, even though there's a hefsek offer between the two of them. It sounds like we have to see water's coming on account of the spring. No, don't take it literally. But every time you see how they emerge and how their life force is the same. Postkin, even though they stop, because emotion, then they draw again. It's interrupted on top, pefsek offer, with the barrier of dirt, and then they get connected again. Everybody sees it's blatant there in the vius and chiyus. And so, but you don't need it. The fact that the fact that sometimes they join at the top reminds you that on the bottom they're joined together, I guess. But the fact that even when it's not joined at the top, we know it's joined at the bottom, and therefore that's good enough. Okay, and then you don't need in the holy Yudog 40 saw in and of itself. Then it says if they stop flow, stop drawing, they can make aboim. They're like water hole water. If you dug it at a distance from the spring, that there they stop drawing like in the spring itself. You should see that's the same emergence and the same life force. There's like a river distant from the spring. So therefore, it doesn't have its own independence. It doesn't have in and of itself the via v'chius. At least you can tell. It's like a water hole water. If it doesn't have 40 saw in it, ain't totally bo. Okay, so even though it might be that the water's coming from the ground, but since it doesn't look like that, so you have to treat it like a mikveh, and it has to be stationary 40 saw. Okay, that's a very big chiddush. This Sif in the Chashul is a very big chiddush. In brackets it says here, now we understand why they made the Mishnah link this to Mechatas. It's got to be recognizable on top that the Neviah and Chiyas are the same. But Oz have a chibur, that's a connection. Biyamim and Oris have a chibur, that's why by seas and rivers, it's not a connection. Because you can't tell that unity, which you can tell where at the source. Lamed out. V'dashim divrei Rambam, but Tosefta, you show for the words of Rambam, Tosefta, nitchim divrei Rabbeinu Ramah, b'sifnim base. We can reject the words of Ramah if we want. Because it says, Mutar Lachbar, Ramah, it says, Mutar Lachbar, Mikveh b'tzad nor you can dig a mikveh next to the river, lead boba, and tell him that Alpha b'shem bar by himself, even though that's what he saw. The Arukh HaShulchan is chalcheles because the ground is porous. For the summer chlorid, since it's next to the river, and we see the porous connections between them. Shamay boim nahar, that the water comes from the river, derech hachichul, through that porous land, the very fine holes in the ground. It's connected to Kaloshono. There's the opposite of Tosefta Rambam Shamru Mefurish. Say explicitly the chover b'tzad hanor. If you dig next to a river, ain't no chibur. It's not a connection. There's del tema rabba. It's astonishing. Eich lo divrei Rambam. How can the Ramah not have seen the Rambam? Lush Lush also copies this. The Chom Fasher Cheshulchan lo gishu b'zeh. And yet the Fasher Cheshulchan did not notice this. P'sachin gadol lefi hanireh. This requires tremendous amount of analysis according to what we see from the simple interpretation of his words. Lamed Beis, no dvar psokim, but no, the Ramah is correct. There's another intent hidden in them. The Mekor Me'aviyah, it starts from the Raviyah Shel Mordechai Perek Beis Vos. This is what the Mordechai says. Menir el Raviyah. Seems Raviyah Dimiyesh to come in Arbei Dakin if there are very many small holes. They join up to make the one big hole of the two finger diameter. That was what Rava said, that the land is porous. So it sounds like it's not a connection. Where each hole does not have a full mikvah on itself. Then even the shveres hanot is not effective. One is complete. In other words, one is 40 saw, even though the other doesn't. I feel in the covering dakim, even fine holes, with starf and shveres hanot, they can join together and make up the shveres hanot. Now, Perachi Perush means Shechover Samach Zel Zeh Shnaim Shlosh Chafiros. When you think next to each other, 2 or 3 holes, Shekulam Chaseh, it's all lacking. Chule. Avo Bishnika B'Chule B'Chachum Mefafeh Mizeh Mizeh. Even though you can see that the water is penetrating underground from one to the other. Afilachi Lo Havi Chibur, and there's nevertheless not a connection. And Chofer Eitz Lanor, but you dig next to the river B'Chule B'Chtei Shon Urim Etzachilcho, where we see the water diffusing through the dirt near the Chilchul Chibur. That's interesting. It's a little bit different. He's saying that it's because you can see next to the river there's more penetration, so that's better. Near the so it's saying explicitly, he says explicitly, say where the small holes from one to the other. No one hole has the 2-finger breadth. Starfing on a covering kulam, then they all join the shveres hanot. But ain't any on dibet Tosefta Rambam. It's not about like the cases Tosefta Rambam sheshevek gomor, where it's absolute interruption. Shemitachas or same misachdim, but on the ground they get connected. Av Rabbeinu Amar Ma'irei shakosel dak ma'od, where it's a very thin wall. Sheish mamish nekavim beineim. You can tell the holes between them. It depends how thick it is and whether you can tell that it's porous. V'zeu shedikti Rabbeinu Ramah, so the Rambam is meticulous in inferring lamar v'anu ro'im achal cholos b'neihem. We see the flow between the two of them. The klomash kavim mamish. We see the holes themselves. Echa mayim mischalchelin mizel zeh, how the water penetrates from one to the other. B'sar v'kulas shveres hanot, they all join together, all the small holes to make a shveres hanot. Sifa ba is bar od. The next sifa is going to explain more. Lama Gimel. It's long today. Whoever I need to mail a Rambam zal, I'm astonished at the Rambam. L'shitasa the Ramaya Lomina Boim saw. According to his opinion, that in spring you don't need 40 suck much. Because I'm the Sif Tess. Lama Lana at Sif Cloud. Why do you need a connection at all? Dim Kal Guf ain't a miskas ain't a. If the whole body can't be dunked, then join them together doesn't work. We call group miskasa, and if the whole body is covered, lama l'tzeref. Why we need to join it together? Hooray b'mayin of a nor of a yamim, lo min arboim sa klal. We don't need that 40 saw. Each hole should be fine on its own. Nam emes kenu. So the truth is like this: the vadi should klefer b'oimek. When you dig deep, until you find water in all of them, it's kosher. Then, of course, you got to the water table and to the well water, and it's kamayin, it's kosher. But it's kamayin, it's like a spring. You don't require 40 saw. Ach b'kamar shechofer ma'afanim tzamayim. Here, so you done a little bit of fine water. V'zel kamayim hamusafim b'tamtzis meik shamim. It then gets down to the water table. So this is like water which collected on account of rainwater gathering. And from the I guess the mud of the mountains. It's that's the meaning of meitamtios. And like water which is down on the ground, water, whole water. Come before Sham. Somebody digs next to the river, or next to the sea, like water of tamtis. It's even if it's coming sideways, not from the bottom. So it's not water table water, sideways water. It's not considered to be a mayan. In poskim lios moshchin, and if they stop flowing, drawing, kamba mayan have a made time to make aboim. Even in the spring, it's like made time to make aboim. I count the quantity. This kind of fact that it's a small hole, which is like water, which is collected in the ground, and not like a mayan or a continuity or the extension of a mayan. So according to we explain the words of Rambam simply. It's about a deep hole. The truth is also we wrote in the previous sif the game before Mordechai Kumash Kosamnu. Chozel Shitas Arrived by Rambam the Mayan so ain't so Garboim saw. Also according to the Shita the Rive and the Rambam you don't require 40 saw in Mayan. I will done, but to us, Kaimon Chomokom Tzarcha by himself, the 40 saw no matter what. And Afkin Ben Chafir Matas Chafir Meruba. Doesn't make a difference if it's a large hole, which reaches the hole, the water table, or a small hole which just gets water sideways. The Yesha Boyim saw. Olam Kasha, when it's 40 saw, it's always good. And now Pergav Nikvos. Rakesh Nagrina Ben Mikvah Lamayim Lian Zochlik Moshi Zbar. But there's a difference nevertheless. She Mikvah Lamayim in terms of flowing water. Lamed out. Ocean Perkei Ben Mishnah Gimel. We learned Mayan Shumasha Kanado. Mayan which draws like a centipede. He writes brackets. Sher Shesh Lahar Beraglaim. Riba V'Yimshicha Areyu Kumosh Hoya. If you added water and you made it draw, so then it's like it was. If the water was standing still and then you added and made it flow again, shovel a mikveh, then it's like mikveh bash boren. That's matar in stationary. Mayan like people choshu, and it's like a mayan that you can it no matter how little it is. I can't show. Perish Rambam. The Rambam explains. Mayan shnifro du mimenu kulos lakos, a mayan, a spring which is separated. Small holes. The Shabbat Mayim Shuvin, and he put Mayim Shuvin, drawn water. Be'ikra Mayim, in the primary spring, Achnis Kasku Elu Agulos, V'godla Hagagoros. And until these holes became more plentiful, more stockpiled. Nemishpat Elu Agulos Kamayan. This the status of these watering holes is like the spring. Home Mayim Molechmem. Since the water of the mine goes in them. But if the waters in the spring were quiet and tranquil, and then he poured water, drawn water in them until they rose by displacement, and then little wadis came out of it. All these little rivulets are equivalent in their din. Because writes Mayan Shehu almost counts in shachos in menu. If you have a spring from which small rivulets draw, v'ravla mayim shuvim, and you put lam mayim shuvim into the mayim, ashgavu mayim sheba amos shutfu until the water swept through these little rivulets. Haray kamayim chol davar, like a mayim for all things. Hayumei mayim momdim, but if the waters of the mayim were standing. So the water draws to them is like a mikveh and it's tire when it's stationary, not when it's flowing. So the bottom line is we're talking about a case we're adding mayim shum to the original mikveh, the original mayim, and if the original mayim was gushing and flowing and alive, it makes the shuvim also have a din of mayim. Then you can tell about mashu according to the Rambam. If the waters of the mayim are dead, they're not moving, but you displace them by adding mayim shuvim. So then, the mayim shuvim no longer shuvim, but they're not mayim either, and therefore you need to have our 40 saw. Okay, that is the middle, but that's very long already for today, so we'll have to stop. Sure.